All right, before we kick off, wanted to give a quick note to everyone. We are recording today's session, so be aware that your name, anything you say, anything you put in chat may be visible to the attendees today, as well as those watching the recording afterwards. So wanted to make everybody aware of that. With that said, let's go ahead and kick off. Good afternoon, good evening, to everyone, wherever you're joining us from. I'm Neil Vaughan. I'm founder of Nielsen Vaughan LLC. I'm joined today by Michele Handley, who leads our AI practice outreach. Today's session is called Unlock AI Innovation Through Your People, and how people-focused diagnostic can accelerate your AI strategy. Quick note about me, I've been in and around Seattle tech space about 20 years or so. I was most recently a chief of staff within an engineering organization at Microsoft. I now own and operate Nielsen Vaughan LLC. We are focused on providing top tier talent and services to organizations that are navigating through change. Michele.
Yes, thank you, Neil. My name is Michele Handley, and I'm the Director of AI and Consulting Solutions here at Nielsen Vaughan. I've been in the industry for over 12 years, working with companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, T-Mobile, among many others, where I've focused on digital transformation and strategic solutions for complex problems.
Awesome. Thank you, Michele. Okay, today's session, it's all about change, and specifically the change that AI has brought upon all of us and the teams and the organizations that we work with and support. In that context, really our discussion will anchor on assessing AI readiness and fluency and why that's so important to do, specifically down to the individual level, and then back up to the aggregate and organization level, and how that will ultimately be your secret sauce to unlocking innovation and accelerating your AI effort. So really excited to have this conversation today. And again, we want to thank everyone who took the time to register. Okay, so let's dig in, Michele. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge that the folks that are attending today or listening at a later date are coming at this from different angles. Lots of different voices in the room, very likely spanning exec and leadership teams to PM and operations to HR and learning.
That's exactly right, Neil. And you might be in the executive and or leadership side, and you might be approving AI budgets somewhere in the last year. And if you're honest with yourself, you're not entirely sure if it's going to the right place. You're getting updates, you're seeing activity, but there's no clean way to know if it's actually working. Or you might be on the PM ops side, and if you're running point day to day, you're not necessarily worried about budget, but you're more worried about where to even start. What do you fix first? Who needs help? What's actually broken? What risks are involved? Or you might be on the HR and learning side, and you're just trying to figure out how your people are really doing, who needs training, what systems are people focusing on, how are people utilizing AI, and it generally on the learning side, trying to figure out how AI is helping your people as well.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Michele. Same challenge across those viewpoints, and any other viewpoint that you're coming at this from. It really comes down to visibility and getting a key on where your people are, where they're actually strong, and where they're exposed. We're of the opinion that's where a lot of organizations get it wrong. They're overly indexing on tools and platforms, and assessing those versus assessing the people. And so in my humble opinion, when you don't have that visibility, it makes it increasingly hard and challenging to design an effective rollout, set the right training budget, write the right governance policies, when you don't have that insight into actually the blueprint, so to speak, of your team in place today. So that's the whole premise of what we want to talk about with you today. Okay. So want to spend a couple moments on some stats to help anchor this discussion. Before I do, we want to start off with just something I saw in the news recently, as maybe a few weeks back, a couple months back, and it was specifically it was a Microsoft story, and basically the gist of it was they had put an ask out to some of their engineering teams who had been deployed under the right conditions, certain AI tools to use, and essentially asked them to throttle back usage. And I believe it had to do with token usage at the time. So um, chaotic for sure. What I found actually kind of comforting, quite frankly, about that is that here's an enterprise level company navigating through this change, figuring out as they go as well. And I felt some level of, okay, if they're going through this, it's okay. I feel that way too. So I think we're in really good company. If your head is spinning with all of this change over the last year, I guess really what I wanted to say was, hang in there. You're not alone. Okay, couple key stats I want to hit. And there's all kinds of stats you can march out or bring into these types of discussions. I see a different one every day hitting my feed. But this 56% stat really kind of hit home for me. And essentially what that is 56% of CEOs feel they are getting zero return on AI investments. So not like a little, not a minimal, zero return. And that came directly from a PwC global CEO survey that was done recently, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it was cross-referenced by our partner organization, AI4SP, against other companies you'd likely recognize like IBM, Deloitte, Gartner, McKinsey, et cetera. So it really kind of holds up.
Yeah, and here's a couple of contributing factors to that, Neil. 8 in 10 workers are already using AI tools that their company never approved. And 9 out of 10 of failing AI deployments, the leader who signed off on the budget isn't a daily AI user themselves. Put those together, the workforce is already moved. And in many cases are teaching themselves how to utilize AI and how to make it work best for their particular sector. Leadership often hasn't felt what AI actually does. Hands-on, you can't set direction on something you don't understand firsthand. This is really a structural problem, and it's exactly what a real diagnostic surface is.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a knock in any way, just a reflection really of where we are right now with the AI work that's happening as of August 2026. Super eye-opening stats. And again, there's all different kinds of stats. Those were a couple we wanted to really anchor today's discussion on. There's something else, Michele, and I want to be really super clear with everyone who's listening in today. 100% AI is a deployment. It's a real rollout, real money involved, real change management. We're not advocating that anyone stop what they're doing. What we are advocating for is what we feel an effective deployment needs the most. And that's really, truly diagnosing people, understanding behavior of the people going through it. So not the tools, the people.
And it doesn't matter where you are right now. If you haven't started yet, this is the best time to get a baseline. And if you are mid rollout or you're struggling, this tells you exactly where it's breaking down. And when you think you're done or you've already pushed out your deployment, this is often where we find the most surprising gaps because everyone assumed it's worked and nobody is quite checking to see how it's working. So the same question in all 3 of these cases is, do you actually know where your people stand?
100%. Okay, so let's talk about knowing where your people stand and the idea of visibility, Michele.
Absolutely. And I just have to say, this is visibly my favorite slide. I just love the fact that it's the check engine light on and it's talking about the blind spot. So what does not understanding where your people are look like? For leadership without this insight is you're navigating blind in a very specific way. You can't quite see spend, and you can see the tool licenses, you can see the pilot statuses, but you cannot see behavior. Isn't that right, Neil?
100%. And yeah, you can see spend in all of those things. It's the behavior that's the big gap, right? And so without visibility into that behavior, a journey tends to look like this. And feel free to do the thumbs up or raise your hand if this sounds familiar to you at all in any way, shape, or form. But funding is happening top down. Executive office board makes a decision somewhere to purchase X tooling or platform. Um, the communications go out, like a center of excellence or your AI council or your AI SWAT team, whatever you want to call it, gets stood up, all good things. But what starts to happen is adoption, some level of adoption starts to go invisible. And some employees are getting really, really good at this. Quite often it's on their own. Um, and that cohort of folks that are kind of self-educating, so to speak, are typically a smaller percent of their workforce, and a lot of them actually don't tell anyone either. They work in silence and silos for a number of reasons. A, there's not really an incentive to speak up. Um, B, a lot of those folks that are moving very quickly across that fluency spectrum are also using unsanctioned tools because they're not getting what they need otherwise. And so there's some richness to that conversation that we'll come back to in the presentation as well. It continues downstream. So the data that keeps getting boiled up to leadership, it starts to drift, so to speak. Maybe there's AI surveys that are being done with the team, but really the actual behavior of what's happening under the hood, so to speak, going back to the visual, like true adoption, sentiment of the team, that unsanctioned AI usage, that shadow AI, actual time reallocation. What are people actually doing with the time that they're getting back when they are using AI? Starts to get missed, right? If there's not an appropriate diagnostic intervention to uncover this. So the picture starts to become a different picture than what they're actually being told. That continues on downstream because the decisions that are getting made as the initiatives and the rollouts continue get increasingly made on guesswork and pattern matching, so to speak. Which skills to continue training, which governance policies to write, what use cases to continue funding, without knowing where everybody really is. All of it really becomes a bit of a challenge. And then ultimately, someone will come knocking on the door asking for ROI. The board, leadership, whomever. The answer to that question is not going to be great. We've activated X amount of licenses. We've run X amount of pilots. We've reduced X amount of headcounts. It really has to do with digging into outcomes and change that were driven by implementing AI. And again, you cannot get at that without getting at the behavior of what's actually happening within your organization. Okay. All right. So let's pivot a little bit. We talked about some kind of key stats. We talked about lack of visibility and kind of what that looks and feels like. So for Michele and I, that's where we kind of pivot over to diagnosis, right? And so for us, we use two key frameworks. The first is indexed on the people specifically, and we use dimensions, which I'll talk about in a moment. And the second framework is really indexed on groups. So once we run those people through the groups, we start to bucket them into tiers, and we'll explain why and what we do with that. But let's talk about dimensions first. We use 4: foundation, integration, strategic, and advanced.
Yes, and with the 4 dimensions, the foundation, this is the floor. Are people using AI at all? How often? With integration, how much of their actual workload does AI touch? Lots of people use it for 1 or 2 things or stop there. Strategic, not a technical skill, it's a judgment. Does this person know when AI helps? And just as importantly, when it doesn't. In our client data, consistently the weakest dimension across every organization we assess. People are using AI to go faster, but not yet to think differently. And then we get to advanced. People who are building and orchestrating AI systems, apps, multi-agent systems, they're not just using them, they are the orchestrating everything and making sure it's all set up for their business to be successful.
Totally. And just to put an extra point on that before we move on, when we overlay these dimensions on top of an individual, everyone gets graded across each of these, like where they measure up. So it's a really great way to look at the individuals. When we do that, we start to group the results into tiers, and it's really straightforward. We put them into one of 5 tiers: non-user, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and super user.
Yes, and you can think of these tiers along these lines. Beginner, basic chat. That could be someone that's using this to advance emails or marketing messaging. Intermediate, you're using AI to co-work on deliverables. Advanced might be basic agents, interactive docs. It might be someone that uses it as a project management risk assessment that is built upon Copilot, for example. Or you might be a super user and you're building apps, you're having a bunch of agents in workplace, you are also doing new workflows. And there's a lot of different areas that you can really think a super user in your workforce is going to be the person you want to go to and find out who to help you out.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, too, the numbers that are on the slide, that's actual client data. Obviously, we've removed the client name off of it, but we include these because it's illustrative of like a regular pattern that we see. In that, most organizations, again, August 2026, where we are right now with all of the changes that are happening, tend to cluster at the beginner and intermediate when you look holistically at an organization. So 70 to 90% of an organization typically is falling within those tiers. The advanced and super user populations, often like 2 to 8%. This population is absolutely disproportionately available, or excuse me, disproportionately valuable, as Michele just said. And that's for a number of reasons, which we'll talk some more about. But these are the folks, again, that are figuring things out on their own. They're moving ahead at their own pace, at a quicker pace, I should say. Most leaders don't have a really good sense of this population. They more than likely know some of these folks, but really truly uncovering like the full population is super important. So that tends to be one of the fastest levers available to help start accelerate AI adoption and innovation. All right, so talked about the frameworks that we use. I want to talk for a moment how Michele and I actually bring that to life in our practice. And again, this is to help stir thinking of everyone else that's listening to the call as you think about how you make this real for yourself. So we use a specific AI, a diagnostic called the AI Compass. We use that in partnership with AI4SP. If you're not familiar with AI4SP, check them out. They're fantastic. They're a Seattle area AI forward company, globally recognized in Gen AI intelligence and implementation. They do all kinds of really great stuff. But we actually pull in this one specific tool that they offer, and we've licensed that and pulled that into our practice to get at what we need to do. So here's what that does for us. Using that specific tool enables us to immediately benchmark every single person that we run through it against a worldwide population of professionals. And this across multiple industries. So worldwide, over 70 countries. The professional pool is a live growing number. I actually need to update the number on this slide. As of today, it's close to 350,000 people around the world. We expect that to hit 1 million by the end of the calendar year. That population spans private, public, government, not-for-profit, and the industries we're able to slice on is about 20 plus right now. So imagine like engineering, finance, manufacturing, legal, tech, all your typical standard industries that you would already be familiar with. The thing that's really fantastic is it lets us measure AI readiness and fluency against professionals in your line of work and your role level. So for example, me, Neil Vaughan, management consulting or professional services, senior level, when I run myself through this, I'm able to see, hey, where do I fall on the spectrum of other professionals like me at my level around the world, right? Um, where I fall, and then I'm also able to see like, hey, here are some things I can do based on other top users to help increase my own fluency. And really good news too. We at the end of the session, I'm going to flash up a QR code so that folks that registered for today's session can actually go try this themselves. Wanted to make that available to everyone just as a quick thank you. Michele, what's that experience actually look like for an individual when they go through it?
Yeah, so it also answers a bit of Kale's questions here in chat, but it is a short 10 to 15-minute experience to answer about 30 questions. There's no personal identifying information, so it's fully anonymous, which drives more accurate answering. Upon completion, the user gets an immediate report, and that actually will show you where you stand. It's a 2 to 4 page report, and it includes a 30, 60, 90-day development plan specifically for the individual. So let's shift to talking about the team and org level, because that's quite interesting as well.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So that is the experience for the individual. I love it. It's great. Everyone immediately walks away with a little report that's specific to them. But the part I get like especially enthused about is when you run an entire team or organization through that process. It really gives you tangible and tactical information that can really, really help you. Imagine, when you have a team of 100, 200, 300 people going through this process, it really starts to pull out the DNA or the blueprint, so to speak, of your team. And it's an extremely comprehensive level of data and insights that empowers the team and the leadership to really start to make increasingly smarter decisions that count. Okay. And there's all kinds of great stuff. I'm not going to drain everything that's on here, but there's a couple things I want to pop that I particularly love when you have this aggregate information. Pockets of innovation. We mentioned that before. Typically, an organization, 2 to 8% of their population are super users. A lot of time they're working in silos. Yes, this is anonymous. There's no PII, but when you run an organization through, you are able to identify that there is this pocket. And as you action on some of these insights, you can get that pocket to hand raise. And these are going to be the folks that you're going to leverage to teach others how to fish, help upskill, help accelerate, participate in pilots. These are also the contingent of folks that are more than likely using shadow AI, so unsanctioned tool usage. Important discussion to have. Yes, there's a huge amount of risk with that, which needs to be addressed. But there's also a reason these folks are using these tools, and it's important to understand the why behind that. And I'll share a really good example in a few minutes. The other thing this allows us to get at is true skilling gaps. So typically going back to that visibility slide that I shared before, platform tools get purchased, the training gets released, which is typically like an out-of-box training. 6 months later, leadership is asking for results and like, where's my innovation, right? And it's not that easy. By really understanding where the gaps are for your team in place today and then pulling in the right type of training and upskilling for that really helps you, again, start to move the needle in the right direction. All kinds of other great stuff. You can get a sense of where your company shows up in your industry in terms of that benchmarking I shared when you look at it at the aggregate level. You get a sense of like how people are really allocating their time. And then because of the way the diagnostic is structured, both qualitative and quantitative, there's all kinds of really good, rich insights and trends that you're able to pull out, particularly from the qualitative data as well. One of the most important things I want to land about all of this is that it's really about getting the most out of the investments you've already made, your people, the tools in place. So it's not so much around let's push a tool or a platform. It's like, wait, pause, take a pulse, what's working, what's not, and let's start to make a plan that leverages that information. So you don't have to throw spaghetti at the wall. You can actually make really strategic, decisive decisions using that information.
Thanks, Neil. Totally clear on the individual experience and the team roll up, but can you share what it actually looks like in practice? Maybe an example from a client?
Yeah, totally. Yes, I can absolutely share what it looks like in practice. I'll hit both at the same time. So for us, it's really, really straightforward, and I'd recommend anyone else take this approach too. Um, we will typically do a discovery session with a leadership team, make sure we hear them, what's important to them, where they've been, where they want to go. We'll apply the diagnostic throughout the company. As Michele shared before, it's like individually, it's a 10 to 15-minute experience. But undoubtedly, there's time zone differences and folks that are out of office. So we give that a few days to run everyone through it. When that happens, we get all the data, start to splice, dice that, and unpack it, so to speak. We'll circle back with leadership and do like an initial readout, high level, make sure there's no surprises, no one's caught off guard. Here's the high level learnings. And then ultimately deliver just an extremely comprehensive breakdown of all the insights, the trends, along with recommendations on how to use that information. At that point, the company, the team can take it, they can run with it internal, they can hand it off to another supplier that they work with already for them to action on. Oftentimes we're brought in to help fill those gaps or just support in any way that we can as well. It really runs the gamut of how that looks, but ultimately it's actually a pretty straightforward engagement. One thing I want to mention, I put this quote on this slide, is that making a mistake is totally okay, but feeling like you have to live with the mistake, it's not okay. You don't have to do that, right? And so, and I make mistakes all the time, right? But feeling like you got to put your heels in the ground and not adjust or be agile, that's where a lot of people go wrong, particularly when they're making big investments with this. A super quick example. Is it okay if I go on, Michele? I'll give a really practical example of what this looked like.
Yes, please.
So leadership team brought us in to run it. It was actually the HR side of the house. We did that initial call and discovery session with the team. CEO was actually adamant. We're not going to have shadow AI. There won't be any. We've actually deployed the tool. We've done the comms. I'd be really surprised if there is. There was, and there was quite a bit of it ultimately. And because we had that initial agreement with the team as we kicked this off, like, hey, look, the good, the bad, and ugly, we're going to have open conversations about it. We were able to broker conversations around like why that was, right? And ultimately what this led to, and it's actually still happening now, is that initial enterprise product that was getting rolled out is still getting rolled out, but throttled quite a bit. And then we're moving they are moving we'll call it like product B that showed up in the shadow side of the house, in under the right governance, and essentially like they're testing it, so to speak. They heard what the workers were saying, and they're kind of doing it under the right guardrails and decreasing by doing that. Listening is so important, but also removing the security risks by having that continue to be on an outlier. So that's going on right now. They're gauging what'll happen. Ultimately, what all of this means is really good data-driven decision making is enabled. That is also driving a budget efficiency. So you can imagine a scenario where if a team wasn't willing to kind of lift the hood, so to speak, and waited a year down the road to actually get a sense of this, the pain would have been much more than actually, taking a pulse as this process was going on to really see what was working, what's not, and then shifting and using their time, money, resources, people much more wisely. So I hope, good example, Michele.
Yeah, when you talk about that, it makes me think of it in a little bit of a different way. It's like, when is the last time you took your car into the shop, not because of something wrong, but just for a checkup? Most of us wait for the check engine light. Organizations are doing the same with AI, right? They're waiting until something breaks. The AI compass is more of a diagnostic scan you run before the warning light comes on.
100% and love that example. And that's a lot of times like outside of these webinars, how I tend to talk about it with individuals as well. So, and I can talk about it all day long because I love that aspect of this part of the landscape that we've chosen to kind of play in and help serve and support, so to speak. Michele, before I hand the talking stick back to you to, in case there's any questions, um, I did want to say just a really quick thanks to folks that attended in person today, as well as registered online or watching this later. The QR code on the right, that is for a free pass to our AI Compass. Go check it out, take it, benchmark yourself. Again, it's private, it's anonymous, there's no PII. You'll get to see how you show up in your profession against, today's numbers, 348,000 people around the world. Love your feedback on it. So I'll pause there. Let's take some questions before we close, Michele.
Absolutely. So we did have Kale's absolutely obvious question of the day apparently is do the users know they are being graded? So yes, you know you're being graded. You actually have visibility on it yourself. However, it is fully anonymous. So I would not be seeing your information that you enter into that system, if that makes sense.
I wasn't so much thinking about the compass one, unless that's the same mechanism that you run in the client orgs. And I was thinking back a couple of slides when you were talking about doing that survey where you would find out where which quadrant they landed in, and then which and then which maturity level, which dimension, there you go, like which dimension they were in, and then which maturity level 1 through 5 they uh, were measured to be in. And so my question was framed against that part, or against that mechanism. Is that during that
It is.
gauging, are they aware they're being gauged?
Yeah,
And yeah,
it is. And sorry if that wasn't clear earlier, Cal. That is part of what the individual sees is how they're measuring up across those dimensions as well. And then when we look at the aggregate information, we see the org as a whole as well. So we get that additional lens on those dimensions as well when you look at that aggregate information. But the individual knows that that's happening. They get to see the results as well.
I will say, in fairness to folks who are going to listen to this later, I asked that question before. I think I jumped, not knowing, I
Yeah, no
jumped.
worries.
My question preceded the answer in that case, but I do appreciate that.
Yeah, no
And
worries.
the reason I was asking is, I come from that space that you were talking about, where we've got different levels of maturity, different levels of adoption, and you've got that council on one side saying, we've really got to drive this, and we've got to have that adoption and so forth, and then the ROI that goes with it. And then you've got the other side of the house without what I call those ambassadors. That council is going to struggle to
Yep.
to see that ROI the way the leadership is anticipating in 6 months, like you laid out. So with that premise, assuming that I'm not alone in that premise, what are you seeing on the ground, you two, in terms of, are we seeing orgs with that ambassador side as well? Are they seeing the need for both halves of the equation? Question mark.
Yeah, Michele, you want me to take a pass at it or
Yeah, go for it.
okay? Yeah, absolutely seeing that for sure. One of the things that, and I've seen this more than once, and I actually subscribe to the belief as well. Like when you think about those like AI councils or V teams, whatever you want to call them, super important to have them, but I think it's actually as important to have different voices in the room. So when you go back to what I shared around like being able to identify like super users in your, or 100%, you want them in it too. But I'm
Yeah.
also a big proponent of having the naysayers and the blind optimists in that space as well, because it kind of helps you
Yeah.
balance out a little bit. But yeah, we're seeing
Yeah.
a little bit of all the above, so to speak, if that's fair way of saying it. So, and
No,
I
I
think that's the
appreciate that.
piece. Oh yeah, of course, of course. That's the other thing I would say too, is like there's no playbook on how to do this successfully. Uh, there are learnings and best practices that are, coming out more and more and maturing and stuff. But again, that's why I'm really super bullish on being able to peel back the onion and seeing like the behavior and the people. And that goes to what you said before too about ROI, Cal.
Yeah.
Like the ROI models of, last year, 2 years, 3 years ago, they don't necessarily work the same now when you start to look at this type of work, and you have to get at it a little differently. And that's a really big change for a lot of people as well. So
Yeah. I'm gratified to hear what you folks are doing on the ground and how it's addressing a need that I've seen from the trenches and seen where folks are dropping the ball and where folks are starting to get the clue. So I think you're doing the right amount of work at the right time for the right problem. So,
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank
got
you.
it.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I think the secret sauce is being willing to, put a lens on yourself, put a lens on the organization, be comfortable with the chaos, and that it's not an easy process to go through, but like to do the work. And I think those organizations that are willing to put in that work, I think, are the ones that are doing well, or navigating, successfully, I should say.
Absolutely. And I think across whole organizations, a lot of people, when they hear something like this, they're automatically, it's daunting to them. They think this is going to take a long time to implement, or they think that they have a good handle at themselves. And when they find these gaps, they're like, oh my goodness, I don't know why we didn't think to do this sooner.
Mhm.
So when someone's going through an assessment like this, it's the whole time to get the insights generally is about 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the size of the rollout and the approach. And this is being able to be run across an entire organization to then right your ship the direction that you want it to go.
This is not my webinar, but I would say that that's the right signal, because as we know from that PMO perspective, if you will, if you don't do these kind of measures and take those corrective actions early, they get more expensive as you go.
100%.
And you do have a bit of self-fulfilling prophecy with those slow rollouts. The other thing I've seen just probably over the last couple of days in the thought, sort of, I call it the thought leadership bubble around this kind of thing, was saying, hey, let's remember that not only are we talking about governing AI in terms of what it does to empower our transformations and our strategies, but we need to begin thinking about these large AI rollouts as transformations themselves. They are really no different than any other transformation if you think about it.
That's right.
And I'll leave it at that. It's like that my mind was altered and blown and expanded. It's like, wow, it's really that simple and really that complex at the same time.
100%, right? And along those lines, Cal, just to piggyback on that, right, is like that idea that it is transformative, because you're not rolling out, like, you are, but you're not, a piece of software. Like, it's not fire and forget,
Right.
and you come back and check on it in 6 months. It's a different way of thinking. You're in a lot of ways launching like a digital workforce, so to speak, and so that involves a different way to assess, maintain hygiene, all of those things, manage against bloat, so all the above. So it's just an interesting time, for sure. So
I was going to say,
I like to think of it as a digital approach with people mindset.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like that a lot. What were you going to say, Cal?
Oh no, I was just going to say, and just going to sort of, we're going to make so many piggybacks here. We're going to touch the moon. But I was going to say, part of it too is distinguishing at that organization level. Fine, so you've got Microsoft 365 Premium or with Copilot Pro, if you will, on the one hand, and that's great. That is one of those ones where that's a rollout, that's a software tool, but you could argue against that being transformative. But at the same time, if we're doing any sort of agentry or we're doing any sort of multi-factor or multi-platform LLMs and things of that nature, that's when, how do I say this? You have to get people, I've seen this on the ground, where you have to get people excited about the tools that help them do their job right now.
Yep.
As much or more so than those aspirational, transformative, get them in on the ground floor with the cheap and easy wins. And then you've got their buy-in and support for those larger historical, 2-year roadmaps.
That's right. Yeah, you build confidence, and you in a way, it's not biting off too much right from the get-go, right? You got to get, like, to your point, Cal, get those quick wins, build confidence, and move on. And same way with, like, even specifically on that slice of the tech of agents, right? Like, you don't want to, I don't want to get into solution at this point, but I'll mention really quick. It's like the more narrow scoped and specific that is, the better, the more effective it is. And
Yeah,
the same thing, if you go try to design the one thing that's the end all be all for your business, bad news, you're going to run into a little bit of trouble with that. But
well, and
okay, yeah,
Neil, we haven't actually on any of our webinars yet gone to our testimonial page, but I feel like
oh sure,
today's a good day to kind of go to that, especially with what we're talking about. I mean, this is exactly what large enterprise and middle and small companies are kind of approaching with this diagnostic and how their experience is going with them. So just kind of a firsthand view of what some companies are experiencing themselves. But I'm happy to let Neil talk about that a little bit if you'd like to, Neil.
Yeah. There's just three just really quick examples of folks that have kind of gone through this experience themselves. And again, I want to put this all under the lens of, like, this is our approach, right? I'd advocate for anyone to go out and find an approach that works for you. Of course, we're happy to help you. But based on, like, our approach to do it, this was some of the sentiment that came back, and it was really kind of anchored on, like, oh my gosh, thank you for the visibility into things I didn't understand were necessarily going on. And now that I know, I'm able to kind of make a little bit more of an educated, decision on how to move forward. So I won't drain each of these, but that would be the common thing across all of them. So, yeah. And then depending on who actually goes through the process, sometimes the reaction can be actually pretty strong in terms of, like, oh, this is great. Like, how do I do this quickly and get everyone through it? So, yeah,
I'm
I love
struck
it.
by
Now
the
that I know.
KPIs. I hate to mislabel the word KPI here, you guys, but I'm struck by the numbers of, as a customer, if you will. I'm reading these, and the numbers are just popping out at me, right? In terms of latent ROI, missed, what do we call it? Dollar costing, missed opportunity, and so forth. Opportunity costing, rather. 18 months, 7% of the workforce, and then within 90 days of having a task force stood up, they're seeing that equation flip, right?
That's right.
Almost
That's
as
right.
quickly or more so than they saw it degrade. And it just continued. The trends continue across each of your verbatims here.
Yep, that's right.
Right there in front of their faces,
Yeah, 100%, right? And I think what all of them have in common, thanks for pointing that out, Cal. I think what all of them have in common is the willingness to, like, shine a mirror back and be like, okay, this is a bit, it's overwhelming. It's in some ways chaotic. Change is, like, complicated, but let's shine a mirror. Let's see what's really happening and be willing to see that, to talk about it, to shift and move the ship in the right direction, so to speak, based on that information. So kudos to these folks for, being willing to do that.
Absolutely.
Because it can be a challenge to do it.
Perfect.
Cool.
Well, we are getting it to be at time. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. And as was mentioned just a bit ago, we do have the QR link on this thank you note here that'll be available for the next 24 hours to just give this a try yourself. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us and listening, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Good job.
Welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate the answers.
Yeah, you're
welcome.
welcome.
See you on the next one.
Yeah.
You got it.